Jai Shri Krishna, Namaste, and welcome to Chitty Media's Current Affairs Show. Today, I'll be talking with our in-house guest, Pandit Satish Sharma. Panditji, welcome.
Pranam Slonaji, Namaskar, and Jai Shri Krishna to you, Jai Shri Ram. Pleasure to be here. My goodness, it's been a busy day, hasn't it? So much to talk about today.
It has. Well, we're here in the UK and we have a new Prime Minister. It was a choice of Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss. It seems that the United Kingdom aren't ready for their first non-white leader, it seems.
Well, that's a conclusion that's very easy to leap to. And I know a lot of people have been making that assumption. But there are quite a few good little things that have been brought to everyone's attention, I think, to be honest. Firstly, if you look at the numbers, we had Liz Truss, I think, just over 80,000 votes.
Yes.
And Rishi Sunak just over 61,000 votes.
That's right.
And that's a really good showing. So, it was neck and neck, to be perfectly honest. That is much, much better than any of the pundits had really expected. They were all making ridiculous statements that he's only going to get 5% of the vote and all sorts of remarks like that.
Yeah.
So, that gives you an indication that the voters, the membership of the Conservative Party, in huge numbers, actually voted for Rishi on the basis of his competence, on the basis of his showing and his very, very competent performances in all the hustings. So I don't think it I don't think that it withstands scrutiny. The notion that the Conservative Party membership is racist or not ready for a Hindu voter, I think they've proven it otherwise. All it would have taken is 10,000 the other way, and we would have had a different issue. One thing I've been talking about with a number of our Hindu community friends is that if 10,000 had been members of the Conservative Party, then this could have been a pivotal occasion. This could have been an occasion where the Hindu membership could have actually swung and made history. They could have swung the vote and made history. So I'll remind everybody, it doesn't matter which party you're involved in or which party's principles and manifestos you're inclined to support. The key thing is to get engaged. In a democracy, if you're not part of the decision making, then really you're saying, I don't want to really guide the country. I don't want to be involved in making it better. I don't want my voice and my opinions to be heard. I don't want to have a say on how the resources of this country are allocated. And we can't do that anymore. It's time for us to step up. Some communities have already learned this lesson. We know the Labour Party has been very successful in recruiting membership, but also in appointing political office. So we have a long way to go. I really hope everybody realizes that you don't have to take over the whole shebang. All you need to do is to control the kingmaker percentage. And that could have happened in this. So just in response to your question, I don't really think the notion that it was his Hinduness which caused a problem. I'm really encouraged that so many, 60,000, actually came out and said, we're happy for him to leave the country. That's an incredible endorsement.
It certainly is. And like you said, all the predictions were a lot lower. So it was a fantastic result if we look at it in that macro scale. Like you said, 10,000 more votes for him, they would have been neck and neck.
Yeah.
So absolutely. And that's a really lovely message that you're sending out to our viewers, because there's a lot of keyboard warriors out there. We've seen them all commenting and blowing hot air in their own echo chambers, but you have to get out of your comfort zone. You need to be active and engaged where it matters, and that's out there, boots on the ground. So that's a fantastic message. Thank you, Panditji, for that.
That's okay. I'm going to allow myself a moment of self-appreciation. About 2 months ago, I was asked the question, before Penny Mordaunt had in fact stepped down, I was asked the question who I thought would be the first to cross the finishing line. And my thoughts were that it would either be Liz or Penny Mordaunt. In fact, I'd thought that Penny Mordaunt resonates more with the Conservative Party membership. But Penny made a few mistakes too many, and so that left Liz. So about 2 months ago, I put forward the probability that Liz would be our Prime Minister. So I'm very happy that that came together today.
Fantastic prediction. Yes, you got that spot on. Thank you. And Also, moving on to recent news that we've seen that India is now overtaken the UK in being the 5th largest economy on the global list. What do you think about that? It's something to be celebrated, right?
I heard somebody make an observation that the last time this happened was before the British invaded. At that time, India was leading Britain in terms of GDP. And so, it's taken us a bit of time to get back there. It's nice that that's happened. It shows a trend. And it really also, I think, fires a shot across the bows of those who have been criticizing the BJP and particularly Prime Minister Modi, because despite the global recession, despite the problems in all sorts of health-related areas, the COVID pandemic, and other issues, despite all of that, India's GDP has been steadily increasing. The other nations have been steadily decreasing. And I think one of the headlines I saw, which was that Britain has slipped beneath India in the rankings, it also tells a story. Britain is not surging forward with its GDP and
No.
economic growth, and India has been. Those two factors have combined, I think, to cause this to happen. But before we get too happy, if you have a look at the per capita
Yes.
GDP, then that's a different kettle of fish. And we have a long way to go to catch up
Yes.
there. One of the other things that's visible underneath the statistics, though, is that Britain's wealth gap has dramatically widened, whereas India's Bharat's wealth gap has dramatically decreased.
Yes.
And so that is another pointer that the trend is moving in the right direction in India and the wrong direction in the United Kingdom. We have a lot of work to do here in the United Kingdom. Just on a residual note from what we were talking about a moment ago, we've also had the news that Priti Patel has resigned. She's no longer the Home Secretary. And
Yes.
I think that's to be expected. She's a mother of young children. And that was one of the factors why she didn't toss her hat in the ring when it came to the Prime Minister elections. And so her resignation isn't a surprise. But I think there is an element of disappointment and a bit of sadness. She became Home Secretary at probably one of the most difficult times.
Yes.
And her portfolio included some of the most challenging issues of our time. Added to that, the Bullingdon boys at the heart of the Conservative party, and especially the PLP, the Parliamentary Party, they're not known for being gentle. The what do you call them? The leading lights in the civil service. The old dons who have been holding it all together. They're not particularly welcoming of women generally, and it has been noted on a few occasions that she's had quite racist sort of attacks. So she has withstood all of that. She pushed through some of the points that she wanted to make.
Yes.
She's been party to this criminal reform bill that's gone through. All sorts of changes she's made. And I think once the dust settles and people reflect on her time, she will actually come out of this very favorably. I wouldn't be at all surprised if she now takes a bit of a breather, takes a few years on the back benches, having understood exactly what's involved in all of this. And hopefully we'll see her on the front benches in some new incarnation. So I think we should send our best wishes to her and thank her for being such a stalwart representative of our community.
Absolutely. A lot of the comments online actually supported her because she was an out of the box thinker, to send refugees to Rwanda. Who would have thought? And that would definitely put off illegal people coming.
Well, let me be precise. Let me be precise, because a lot of people have accused her of that. She was actually sending people who were here illegally.
Illegally, yeah.
Yes, as opposed to those who have genuinely got refugee status.
Yes. It's those arriving on the coast in dinghies.
That's right.
Because we don't know who they were. It's funny
Absolutely.
because they all had their mobile phones and cash, but somehow lost their documents with their ID. So we had no idea who they were, what criminal activities they might be partaking in. And so it was a fantastic idea. We've just got to now implement it. And Liz Truss says she will.
It's quite funny to watch now, because those who are on the left of the party with this shallow idea of equality and no discrimination, they were struggling to find reasons to criticize Rwanda. they couldn't say that this is a terrible policy without saying Rwanda is a terrible destination. And so to watch them tie themselves in identitarian knots was quite amusing to see. But you're right, it is the out of the box thinking, which nobody has tested it yet. We don't know whether it will be successful or not. It may well be that once it's implemented, it causes a dramatic turnaround in events. And then again, if that happens, she'll be remembered as having done that very fondly. And I was watching her speak in Parliament today, and her participation in the debates today was actually amongst, I would say it would rank amongst the best performances she's given in the House. She was very confident, very competent and engaged with the issues, had very good, strong answers to everything that was leveled at her. And I could see that this person has grown into this position now. And I'd be very surprised if we don't see future incarnation of her, which is quite successful. So yeah, best wishes to Priti, and as I say, we should all send her a little vote of gratitude.
Absolutely. And to Rishi Sunak as well. He said he'll be serving his constituents on the backbenches, and to everyone that was a part of the campaign. It was an interesting summer.
It was, but thank goodness this campaign is over, because there is an awful lot of serious work to be done. And who knows, Liz Truss may actually be the right person. I'm quite confident that she will resonate with a lot of the country more so than Rishi did. And the distinctions that were being drawn, not all of them were disparagingly incorrect. Some of them were actually quite correct. And one of the other things I noticed in this, that the North-South divide has become very noticeable. You know, what we're seeing is that Britain, or Britishness, is very much London-centric, isn't it?
Yes.
And outside of the London bubble, suddenly you have the real country, and the real country is making the noises and saying, no, we need attention. And this is going to cause a major upheaval in the way in which Great Britain is run. We may even be witnessing the last dying years of British colonial rule. Remember, from one point of view, Ireland is British occupied Ireland, Wales is British occupied Wales, and Scotland is British occupied Scotland. And that sentiment is very present. And so as those fault lines become more apparent, as the tensions, as the economic difficulty, as the pressures on the community increase, as they seem to be increasing on a pretty much weekly basis, all of these issues will come to the fore. The benefits of being governed by a British government located within the City of London and sort of dominated and controlled by the old British institutions and establishment becomes more and more unattractive. And outside in the regions, people are going to be asking those questions. You know, what does it benefit us to have a government to whom we pay taxes, and yet the government says they can do nothing to improve the quality of our life? The government says they can do very little to control the skyrocketing energy prices.
Yes.
What can the government actually do? And I am mindful that Britain lost the colonies. It lost America for this particular reason. There was a campaign around the phrase, no taxation without representation. And the colonies stopped paying tax to the British government. And that precipitated a civil war, which led to American independence. And we are seeing more and more people saying, we don't have representation. And if we don't have representation, then why on earth are we contributing to the exchequer, which is so London-centric? So there are deep civilizational shifts that are also going on here. And it will be very intriguing and interesting to see how the next year and the next year and a half, until whenever the next general election is, develops.
Yes, no, I mean, we are going through a serious cost of living crisis, and now autumn's kicked in. People are really going to feel the pinch. Like we said, India is doing well. Their GDP has gone up by 13% in the last quarter, which is a fantastic achievement. Whereas we are a shrinking economy. People are really struggling in the UK. And Liz Truss has a lot on her hands, because if she doesn't get this right, the Conservatives will definitely lose the next general election. They will be blamed for it. Even if it's a macro issue, people won't see that. They'll see it as a UK-centric issue.
It's worth recollecting also that India's GDP is not comprised of financial services and armament sales. A huge amount of what's classified as the American GDP is actually arms sales.
Yes.
And another huge proportion of it this year will be pharmaceutical sales.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, both of those are investments in human suffering. We've seen Pfizer has now suddenly become the focus of scrutiny because of misrepresentation with regard to the COVID vaccines. And this is not the first
Yes.
time that this sort of scrutiny has happened. We recall that in America, they exported, do you remember the subprime finance fiasco, which brought the global economy down in 2008? And
Yes.
then after that, we had a subprime liberation war, which devastated the Middle East. And that was born out of America. And now we've just witnessed a subprime pharmaceutical fiasco, again born out from America and their desire to have pharmaceutical profits. So profit at every expense is really what's at the heart of the American GDP. And sadly, a large amount of the British GDP is also from armament sales. So
Yes.
these two nations invest in strife and human suffering. India's GDP is not based on strife and human suffering.
No.
And I hope the West starts to notice that it is possible to have economic growth and economic renaissance without engaging in divide and rule, without investing in human suffering, without being the catalyst for conflict around the globe. I think this is really at the heart of the changes that we're beginning to see now.
Yes, no, absolutely. It's hopefully a new world in a better place for the whole world to see that India is really up and coming, using its ethical dharmic values, not based on human suffering. And this is something that really needs to be promoted. India is contributing so much positivity to the globe. People have to take heed, especially bumping up to number 5. It's a fantastic achievement. And like you said, it's not per capita yet because they do have a population of 1.2 billion, but there is a now a narrower gap between the rich and the poor as more people are getting educated from poorer classes to middle class. They're going abroad. I was in Athens a couple of weeks ago and we bumped into so many tourists from India. It's wonderful. You know, the money is flowing and people are enjoying it and they've worked hard for it. So
Mm.
it is wonderful to see.
One of the points that you've raised, and I think it's worth repeating, you said that there's a dharmic resurgence. And I think people forget that, in fact, the government is really the tail and not the dog. And an economy starts to expand and grow when the people become economically active. It's the efforts of individuals, each and every person in a community, beginning to become entrepreneurial, engaging in society, engaging in life, creating businesses, you know, sending their children to schools, buying houses and everything else. That economic activity is actually really what represents an economy. And in India, there is a positive energy which is palpable. You can detect it. If you have a look at the European story, sadly, that energy seems to be dissipating. Where is the energy saying that yes, Europe is going to thrive and the European populations are very positive and forward-looking? There is a dark cloud over Europe at this moment in time. The Ukrainian expedition, that adventurism of the Americans and the British and NATO, that's cast a huge cloud over the whole area, and it's impacting upon the economic performance of the people as well. So there are two different mindsets beginning to dominate, and sadly, Europe needs to dig in deep and find within itself those positive drivers, that forward-looking understanding, which then helps people in a society to start to move an economy forward. Big, big challenges.
Yes, yes, no, very much so. Banditji, I'm not sure if you saw the cricket match yesterday with India and Pakistan, but there's been a lot of controversy since it because the young cricketer Arshdeep Singh, he caught a ball and then dropped it, and so Pakistan won the match. But after that, there was a huge outpour of anti-Hindu Khalistani messaging on his account. They were trying to associate him to separatist movement, the Khalistanis. And it's been brought to light that these are a lot of fake accounts that were set up in Pakistan, and social media is full of fake accounts, be it on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, of paid accounts. These people are being paid to use Hindu names and to divide and rule and to set fuel where there's none needed. But what are your thoughts on this?
Well, firstly, I think we have to give a shout out to that young man. It's not an easy thing to do in front of the world, especially in front of two spectator crowds who are so competitive with each other.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that he is feeling the pressure. But the good side of it is that he should also recognize that we now know that some groups will use every opportunity to exploit and to create a rift where there is none. There was that remarkable report that came out of Rutgers University where they had tracked Hindu-phobic comments, hate speech, etc. And they established a couple of incredible pieces of data. One was that a huge number of accounts which appeared to come from Pakistan were actually spoofed from Iran, and that the Iranian state was investing heavily in creating conflict between Pakistan and India. So it would give the appearance that a lot of negativity was being generated from Pakistan, and that would add a bit of fire to a bit more fuel to the fire. You're absolutely right. But this is a wake-up call. All of the Hindu family, all of the Bharatiyas, all of the Indian citizenry should recognize that whenever there is a conflict and there is a conflagration follows very, very quickly, we shouldn't jump in and engage and pick one side or pick the other side and sort of roll up your sleeves and start to fight back. We should always take a breather first and just step back, because with passionate people, it's too easy to trigger them, to cause a problem, to accelerate and some sort of a dispute even faster, and then to regret it afterwards. So whenever something like this arises, we now know how the response is going to map out in front of us. This will always be the response. And so if we approach it with a calm head and recognize it for what it is, then its impact will diminish dramatically. I've noticed on Twitter, as you've mentioned, and in other places as well, that actually it has had a huge amount of support. And there has been, shall we say, a response which is exponentially significantly greater than the negative one, and which is a very positive and supportive one.
Yes.
In closing, I think it's also worth remembering only a few years ago when Pakistan came to Britain to play in a cricket match and they lost. They were fearful for their lives. They were petrified of going back to Pakistan and suffering violent backlashes. So, the chalk and cheese, they're remarkably different responses. And I'm sure that it'll have been leveraged to make the team even tighter, to give each other so much more support. And he will come out as a better cricket player. And hopefully our community will also come out as more enlightened and strategically aware community members as well.
Yes, absolutely. Bandiji, thank you so much for your insight on these topics today, and I look forward to our next meeting. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure, Bandiji, and welcome back from your vacation. You're looking glowing, as though you've spent a lot of time under the Grecian sun. So
it was beautiful. I highly recommend it.
Okay. A pleasure. Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram, Jai Shri Krishna.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.